following message is from Pastor Jim Eschenbacher, pastor of the branch, as he teaches from Ephesians 5 with a focus on the first 14 verses. For more sermons, please visit us on Facebook or check out our YouTube channel, The Branch, Oregon.
That is, an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. This is going to be a heavy message, as you can tell. Therefore, do not become partners with them, for at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. Try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed to the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, "Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." Father, I ask that you would bless the reading of your word, not because it was read, but because it's your word, and that it would go into our hearts and change us today, Lord. Amen. You know, I was thinking of something during our prayer time this morning before service. A troublesome thing in the church, or a troublesome thing in the life of a Christian, is to hear the truth and not respond to it. The more you do that, the harder your heart gets. If you hear the word of the Lord and you realize that's speaking to me, but you don't do anything about it, and then you do that like 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, 8 times, eventually, you can listen to the word of the Lord and it doesn't even bother you because you have just become so calloused, heard it, gone on, made good money last month without even responding to God. You think, it's working for me. Your life is actually falling apart and you don't even know it. Now, with that intro, this is not really a harsh sermon, by the way. The intro had to be, right? First verse. Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children. King James says followers of God. A lot of the translations say imitators. The Greek word is a very difficult word to translate. Don't really have a good translation. Both of those that I have given you, imitators and followers, are weak. They only can barely get a hold of the picture. If you are trying to imitate God, have fun. Good luck. You're going to collapse. You're going to fall apart. You can't do it. If you are following God, that's a picture of like walking behind. That's not an exact picture either. Notice he says, as beloved children. Have you ever seen that picture, or maybe in real life, I've done it and seen it, of the little boy standing beside his dad. Exact same pose. 2 years old. Got it nailed. Hands in pocket, 1 foot forward. Or my dad was like this. Little boy like this. Isn't that great? 2 years old. And then when he's 5 or 8, he wants to do something that he knows Dad will approve. And he sees his dad fix things. So he grabs a whole bunch of old parts and makes something out of them. Anybody try that when you were a young boy or a young girl? You just make things, or you get into sports because you know one of your parents really loves this one sport, and you just want to be good at it because you really want their approval. And then, young man grows up, and he says he's following in Dad's footsteps. Or chip off the old block. Those phrases. That is what's being talked about here. It's not imitating only, and it's not following only. It's all of the above, and it's as a child. And now the one thing about that particular picture that we have to pay attention to, it's not listed there, is this boy, this child, is watching Dad. How else does he know? He's watching Dad. Be imitators of God. Watch God. Watch Him work. Watch Him in people. Watch Him. Turn to 1 John 3. In my Through the Bible reading that I do, I just finished 1 John. In fact, this morning I finished 3 John. I encourage you to read through the Bible every year. There are so many programs out there. You can Google it and just pick one. I change mine every 5 or 6 years, so I don't. Okay, here's why I do that. It's interesting. I did one for a long time, about 6 years. And then I realized, every year in the summer, I'm reading the same verses. I wonder what those verses would mean to me in the winter. So I got a different program. And now I'm about 5 years into that one, and it's time to change again. But the program that I read takes me through the Old Testament once a year and through the New Testament twice in the same year. So it's a pretty comprehensive. Actually, I think I go through Psalms twice, too. I don't know. Do I? Yeah, I think I do. Anyway, do something. 1 John chapter 3, starting in verse 2. Beloved, we are God's children now. Remember, there's the word children again. We're talking about children, how to be childlike in imitation, in imitating God. Sorry about that. And what will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him. Why? Because we shall see him as he is. We're watching. We're seeing. We're looking. We're paying attention to Jesus. We're not just paying attention to the stock market. We're not just paying attention to what happened on, what's the hot TV show right now? I wouldn't know. Nobody would, right? You won't admit it. I don't know, Jim. Don't watch anymore. Anyway, paying attention to God, listening to what he's doing. If we want to see him as he is, we must be looking at him. James writes in his letter, chapter 1, verse 25, but the one who looks sees into the perfect law of liberty and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. When we look at Jesus, we see the law. We see perfection, holiness, righteousness, justice, forgiveness, freedom. When we look at Jesus, we see love. But love is contained in holiness, righteousness, the law, freedom, justice. Love is not separate from those things. What do you picture when you see Jesus? Do you just picture his cuddly warmth, drawing you to himself and taking care of every problem you've ever had? Do you picture him as holiness? And you find yourself on your knees going, Jesus, I'm not worthy to come to you. I'm not worthy to draw near to you. You know what his response to that is? Yeah, I know. Come on anyway. I took care of it. What do you see when you look at Jesus? Because when he appears, we'll be like him because we are paying attention to who he is. If you see Jesus as only one facet of all that he is, you need to broaden your heart. You need to say, all right, Lord, I need to know and see you for all that you are. You are true holiness. You can't experience love. You can't live in Christ and not live in holiness as well. And that's what Paul's trying to tell us here in all of this that he's doing. Go to verse 2 in our Ephesians chapter 5. Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. To walk in love as Christ did, we must consider the needs of others above our personal comforts and pleasures. That's what he did. And he walked in total obedience to the Father. For us to walk in love, we must consider the needs of others and be obedient to God. Not one or the other, both. Then we walk in love, as Christ walked in love. Remember when Christ came to earth, he had an existence before he came. You know, he was in heaven. If you read Philippians, you'll find out he's left glory and made himself to be a man in our midst, dealing with the stuff that we have to deal with. In order for him to do that, he had to lay aside his comfort level, that which he enjoyed, that which he deserved, that which was rightfully his. He laid it all there, left it there, and came down and said, I'm here for you. That's the expression of love that Paul is calling us to. Pretty tall call. Verse 3. Actually, I'm not going to go through it this way. If I do, we will never finish Ephesians. I'm getting older. I'll die first. 3 through 14. Read it on your own time, sometime this week. But I'm not. Please don't take that as an escape hatch. I do want you to read it. 3 through 14. And here's the reason. Last week we talked about Paul giving us the example of putting off the old man, putting on Christ. This is the same kind of an example in this section, except he's using darkness and light. Put off the works of darkness, put on light, God's light. So just read it on your own, and when you come across one area like he talks about, I read it, you probably were listening going, ooh, there's a lot of areas. If you know an area that he's calling your attention to, pay attention. Hey, Lord, what do you want me to do? How do I handle this properly? What do I do? But I want you to look at verse 11 with me. We're going to camp here for a little bit. This one is confusing. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Is Paul telling us to call people out in their sin? I've heard that. I've done it. It's really scary. Can I just make an observation? If God does not tell you specifically, and you have no doubt in your mind that he has told you, talk to that person about a sin in their life. If that is not what God has given you, don't do it. That thing will go sideways on you so fast you won't be able to find it. You just thought you were going to fix it. It didn't fix. Now, I've been told by some people that I'm too blunt. Actually, I've been called a lot of things. I'm just going to use that one. Too blunt about sin. That I need to be more loving. One time I was told, God's love trumps everything, so sin's not really an issue. I've also been told by others, not nearly as many, that I'm soft. And the way they come at that is tolerance is approval. If I tolerate a sin that I'm aware of, I'm approving. I'm not. I'm just giving you kind of the two-side thing here. I am mostly accused of being a little bit hard on that area. So how are we supposed to expose the unfruitful works of darkness without speaking of them? Read verse 12. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. So Paul here says, follow me, interesting line of thought, expose the unfruitful works of darkness, but don't talk about them. Paul, much as I like you, buddy, I don't have a clue what this means. Well, he didn't end there. He wrote another verse. 13. When anything is exposed to the light, it becomes visible. We are to shine as light. What did Jesus say to his disciples at one point? You are light of the world. Now, we know his disciples from reading about them. In a lot of cases, they were anything but light. Peter hid his light as often as he could. Jesus didn't even address that. He just says, you are the light of the world. Light is not discriminate. It doesn't, like if you turn the lights on in this room, Jeremy goes and turns them off, which, I don't know, young people like that. Carla and I are trying to help some friends build their house, and yesterday we were on the phone like 5 times. Am I going to have enough light in my kitchen? We've got like 9 cans, 6 bulb round light, and then 4 hanging single bulb 100-watt lights. And yeah, you're going to have a lot of light in your kitchen. The older you get, the more you think, can I have more light? I feel that way all the time. Anyway, Jeremy just shuts it off so I can't see my notes. Proves how old I am. Anyway, the point of it is, light is not discriminate. Turn the lights on, everything in the room is lit. It's not a pin light. It's not like trying to find evil. It just lights everything. And that should be the story of our lives. That should be who we are in the world. We should be so in love with Jesus that when we're in anyone's presence, in any setting, there's a light on. We're not shining it. We're not clicking our own brain on. It's just happening because we know and love Jesus. I need water, right? Right. We are light. But our focus is not on the unfruitful works of darkness. Our focus is on Jesus. And as we focus on Jesus, we're light. And the light exposes sin. It exposes unfruitful works of darkness. We don't even have to get engaged. Now, am I saying you never talk to anybody about sin in their life? I am not saying that. That's a different sermon. I'm saying right now I'm just pulling back the pressure and saying that's not our job in Christ, to find other people's unfruitful works of darkness and expose them. No, let's just drop that one. Leave that one away and just say, all right, Lord, I want to live in you. I want to be the light that you said I was, that you say I am. I want to be that light, Lord. I don't have any light in me. You're light. If I'm in you, I'm light. Make that the focus of your life. I'm going to make this personal and demonstrational. I love making up words. Carla and I sing at the Dexter Lake Club approximately every week. We've missed a few, but for the most part, we sing there every week for about 5 or 6 months now. The Dexter Lake Club is not a place of God's love and peace and light. It's a little dark, sometimes darker than others. And it all depends on people mostly. We don't go in there without Jesus. That would be foolish. I've been in clubs, used to be in clubs a lot when I was playing in clubs. Now, that's a bad crowd. That's a bad place for me to be. Now, we go in, Jesus in our heart, and it's like, this is, anyway. We're there to be light. We went, first time, to meet some neighbors. The sermon, the pastor, that would be me, preached a sermon on knowing your neighbor. And so I'm going home and we're talking. Jim, we don't know our neighbors. Oh. I wonder if I can retract that sermon. Nope, you can't. It's out there. So we thought, all right, let's get to know some neighbors. Well, you can walk next door and say hi to your neighbors, but you sound like a Jehovah's Witness. So basically, I can't believe I said that. But anyway, so then we decided, let's go over to that club. We had heard about it. We knew the owners a little bit. We'd heard about them. So we went over. Loved those guys. And then we started getting to know some of the people. And then we started singing gospel on jam night, which is Sunday nights. And it's changed. We walk in there and we go in there to be light. We're not consciously trying to light anybody up. Oh, I got to tell you, I have heard some definitions of God that would make your head spin. They aren't the God that I know. It's the God they need to continue their lifestyle. So they've created a God, and they tell me about God because they know I'm a pastor. And it's interesting. I should keep track of those because there's been some great stories. We have opportunities. That's an opportunity for me to correct these guys. But you know what? Sometimes the Holy Spirit has me just listen and ask questions. I know there's things going wrong. I mean, some of the sin is obvious. I know there's a lot of darkness. I know there's a lot of unfruitful works. God's not telling me to call that out. He's not telling me to judge. In fact, didn't He tell us not to judge? I'm trying to point out just a real-life example for how this can work. Has God assigned you to some people? Going to church, being in a church, as powerful and wonderful and valuable as that is not the extent of your mission on this planet. In fact, if you're typical, it only occupies a couple hours a week. So where are you the rest of the week? Let me throw some possibilities out there. Maybe you are to be light where you work. Maybe it's where your children attend school. Maybe it's a book club. Maybe it's a hunting club. Maybe it's a Bible study, social gathering, sporting event, sporting passion, hobby group. Or maybe you want to start something. I have an idea, but it's for women. It could be for men, but we'd have to do it outdoors. But for women, is have a group, like maybe 5 or 6 women. You come together to cook a meal. It's whoever's house it's at, that person is the cook that day. She hands the recipes out to each person. They cook the meal. They eat together. They have fellowship together. They all get the recipe. And then a month later, they're at a different house. I call it I don't even know. I don't have a name for it. Men could do it around a barbecue, because then you can snort and barbecue and stuff, act stupid like men do. We do not know how to function in a kitchen. Not very well, anyway. Some of you might be really good at kitchen work. I have never quite figured out what the recipe, R-E-C-I-P-E, recipe, what that's for. It seems to say things that matter, but I can't figure out what they are. I am notorious for taking a spice off the shelf. Yeah, that sounds good. Taking another one off. Yeah, no, not that one. And that's how I cook. I just invent. And Gretchen was, when she was little, she grew up on goulash after her mom died, and so I made goulash, but it was never the same. Yeah. I mean, I'd make it 3 or 4 nights a week, but it was never the same meal, ever. And then they would say, I really like that one. And I have no clue what I did. Anyway, an outsider looking in on your little cook club would say, yeah, it's all about food. It's about cooking. It's about eating. You know it's about God. Because you're shining. You're lighting up the world you're in at that moment. Now, if you do want to start something, or you do want to talk about what it is you think you would like to be involved in as far as being light in people's lives, talk to me first, because we'll pray together about it. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's God's idea. I can tell you for a fact, most of my life, I would have walked into the Dexter Lake Club and all I would have been is another partier. Just fall into the ranks and act like everybody else, except I wouldn't get drunk, because I gave that up 3 or 4 years ago. But I realized that in that setting, it's just all about, quote unquote, having fun. God knows perfect timing, and God knows, and He cares about that timing. He very patiently waited for me, 64 now, to mature enough to walk into a club and still hold fast to my faith in God. So if you're not there, you don't do it. They're just going to pour water all over your little light. Or mud. It's tough. It's not all about me. Don't want it to be about me or Carla or both of us. But I do want you to know something. We've been misunderstood in what we're doing there. If you have to defend us, your pastor and his wife, to a religious zombie who thinks that going into a bar is a sin, this is the fact. We would not go in there if God didn't direct us to go in. We would not go in there if we did not know we have a purpose for being here. We would not go in there if it was about beer, wine, and that kind of stuff. God directs us and allows us in there. So you can argue that all you want. You can say, you know what, our pastor, that's not why he goes in there. He believes God has called him to be a light in that place. And any of you that have joined us there know that that is our mission. That's what we do. The second thing is, there's another one you're going to get, which is, it's popular in the emergent church now to go hang out in bars to prove that Jesus isn't religious. Carla and I are not trying to prove anything. We're not worthy of proving anything about Jesus. We are there on assignment. I made this very practical because this message can just be one of those big ethereal things until you realize, oh, he's talking to me. I'm supposed to be a light. I'm light somewhere. And you got to hang on to that light. I had to do some things. I told you I was done with this. I am done with it. But anyway, I had to do some things early to make sure that this was not a distraction. So when Greg, the owner, I said, when you introduce us as Pastor Jim and Carla. And I thought he might throw us out. But he said, he just got right up there and he said, all right, we have Pastor Jim and Carla. And then over time, I quit signing up Pastor Jim. I just put Jim and Carla. And he still introduces us Pastor Jim and Carla. That is who we are in that place. So you don't just join a club so you can be a part of a club. You somehow are different. You're different because you know Jesus. And your relationship with Jesus is the light that exposes the darkness in life. And we're making some good friends there. I actually thought one might be here this morning. I was going to have him share a song with us, but he said he didn't think he could make it, and he didn't. But what has God equipped you to do in this world? Do you know? Have you thought about it? Or are you just getting through life and hoping you have more positives on your scorecard than negatives? What are we supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? You know, praying for and supporting other people is really important. Turn to Exodus. I'm going to give you something that you can invest your time and life in. Exodus 17. Starting in verse 8. Little story here. And Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek. And while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up on top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. Whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary. So they took a stone, put it under him. He sat on it, and Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side, one on the other. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun, and Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. We're talking about the power and authority and importance of intercession. If you are holding up your hand, if you are praying while the battle is going on, you've taken a place like Moses took in that situation. There were people down on the field with Joshua fighting. And there's Moses. I kind of want his job. They even brought him a chair on the mountain praying. And as he prayed, as his hands were lifted, the battle went in Israel's favor, went in Joshua's favor. When his hands came down, his prayers were no longer being lifted, then the enemy prevailed. That's the importance of intercessory prayer. I don't care what you've heard about intercessory prayer in the past or how boring you think it is. That's how powerful it is. And Aaron and Hur, those two guys, they're holding Moses' arms up because Moses got too tired. He couldn't do it anymore. So they are supporting Moses in prayer. The battle's clear over there somewhere. They're supporting Moses in prayer because while they're doing that, the battle is being won. So Carla and I are grateful, totally grateful to you, any of you who come into battle with us, whether it's here, and there are many of you that join us here battling against the forces of evil, and I'm not saying there are people here that are evil, I'm saying that the enemy does not want us to succeed. So we are continually at a battle with him. And there are a good number of people here that support us in prayer, and there are a number of people who come in here and support us by setting up and holding down the fort. Thank you. And there are those who come into the Dexter Lake Club just to support us. Thank you. There are those who babysit for others to come into the Dexter Lake Club or to come here. Thank you. The ones who are in the in the Sunday school room, what do we call it? Christian Ed gathering department. They're in there and they're teaching, but they're also allowing other parents and adults to have less of a chaotic environment in here so we can listen to the Word. Thank you. Whenever you do that, it's that powerful. You are doing something that's allowing God to accomplish what He wants to accomplish. Thank you. Maybe that's your assignment, or maybe God has given you more. Maybe there's some other expression of His light that you are to be involved in. I just throw it out. I'm not going to keep track. I'm not chasing it down. Just don't get through life and think, well, I think I was a pretty good Christian. No, imagine. Oh, I gotta tell you, we do Jesus a complete disservice when we limit Him to our time at church. Are you kidding me? That's when He talks to us? Okay, Jesus, you got an hour this week, and you're done. Are you kidding me? Our life, our very source of joy, our very source of everything, good, and we give Him an hour, 2 hours, whatever? No. So that we don't do that. That's religious. No, don't do that. Give Him every minute of every day. John 17:18. In John chapter 17:18, He says, "As you, Father, sent me into the world, so have I sent them into the world." Jesus came as light. Right? That's what He said. I am the light of the world. He came as light. He didn't come down here and start looking for other light bulbs to hang out with. He came as light in darkness. Isaiah says, in a very dark place, He comes in and lights it up. And then His light began to influence people, and they began to radiate His light, and that has been passed down to us as we are born again in Christ. We are born into His light, and we become the light that this world needs. He sent us as the Father sent Him. So don't just go to church and go, I'm doing my Christian duty. Please don't. Thank you for coming to church. Thank you for being supportive of the branch. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for people. That's an interesting twist, isn't it? We have a church without people. I heard a pastor one time say that church would be really easy if it weren't for people. I don't agree. People is church. But the same way that God sent Jesus into the earth, He has sent us in. So now we go in to be light in a dark place, all right? The little song I sang for you several months ago, it's a little kid song, so we're not going to do it. Let me put these down. I'm playing with them. Oh. My, what would you call her, a director? A fashion... backseat driver? No, fashion queen is telling me I'm distracting. It goes, bright in the corner where you are, bright in the corner where you are, someone far from harbor you may guide across the bar, through the bar, bright in the corner where you are. Now, someone far from harbor, and Michael knows what that means. You know, if you're out a little too long on the ocean and you got to get through the mouth of the Columbia, there's a bar that develops out there because of the constant flow of the river. You can't get across that with a deep ship. You're going to crash. So they have lighthouses. And correct me when I'm wrong here, Michael, which probably is every minute, but let me try it. You know your setting in the boat. You've got your setting because you can triangulate or whatever off the stars, or maybe you got GPS. Anyway, you got your setting, and you see a lighthouse. You turn and you head directly toward that lighthouse. You don't know what else is going on. You're just going to the lighthouse. That is the picture that little song gives us. Bright in the corner where you are. Some of us are waiting for some big event to where we can begin to be really spiritual and make a difference in people's lives. Brighten the corner where you are. Where are you? Not right now, but where are you tomorrow? Where are you on Tuesday? That's the corner that you brighten. I believe this is the word of the Lord to the branch right now. It's not a command, it's an invitation. You will be shocked at the power and authority of God in darkness. It's amazing. I mean, Carla and I, we've been in church our whole lives, and we've waited for those miraculous moments in church when someone gets either completely healed or their life is transformed or whatever. And there's really, that's an incredible anticipation when we gather together. And we have actually seen things happen. But you know what? You step out in the world and you begin to care about the lost and the darkness that's going on, and you just love Jesus in the midst of it all, you will be shocked at how God can work in people's lives. It's completely against everything I ever learned in my religious experiences, because it happens in their environment. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? Wow, you are almighty. You are amazing. And you sent Jesus into darkness, and now you want us in darkness. Don't misquote me on that. You want us to go into darkness as light so that you can show yourself strong. Wow, that's perfect. So in response to Paul's admonition, don't look for unfruitful works of darkness to expose. Look to Jesus. And now you're thinking, some of you are thinking, oh, I wish I could tell so-and-so. Sometimes it's a kid, spouse, parent, distant cousin, neighbor. I wish I could just tell them, this is what, anyway. And now here your pastor comes along and says, no, it's not done with words. Now, that doesn't mean that never happens. I mentioned this earlier. I had a situation happen this past year where I felt I knew it was time. And so I went to a person and talked to him. But that is, in my mind, the exception. The rule is always looking at Jesus, always reflecting, shining His light in the midst of darkness. He was and He still is the light of the world. His presence changes everything. Now, get ready for this. Jesus' presence made some people very angry. When you are shining a light, when you are a shining light for Jesus, for truth, Jesus says, I am the truth. Shining light for truth. Not everybody appreciates you. Some do. Carla and I have this little rule that we use. I do what I see my Father doing. That's what Jesus said. So when we are in the midst of a group of people, I was talking with Mike Mayer about this morning, one of them maybe goes, oh, I get it. I get it. I see it. That's where you go, that person, because the Father is working. You don't have to beat the other people up because they don't see it yet. Allow God time to work in their lives. Allow God time to work in your life. Join the Father in His mission. I'll give you a moment. We're going to sing here in just a little bit, and I'll give you time at the end to ask questions or speak what God has put in your heart. But I wanted to just make sure that this feels as practical as I need it to be presented. Do you know it to be practical? I mean, some of you are going to walk out of here and you're not going to do one thing with this message. That's not my control. But it's up to you. Don't let Satan rob you. Don't let him take it away. Don't be afraid. Don't think, oh, I could never, I'm such a dud. I could never light up. I couldn't even light up an outhouse. That's a bad example, Jim. You know, there ought to be a connection between your brain and your mouth. Don't you think that there should be a connection there? I don't know what happened to mine. I don't know. Yeah, I know. Anyway, we're going to sing here. I'm not going to follow any of the rabbits. I'm just going to sing. Bless the Lord. Into an outhouse, yeah. Where'd that rabbit go? Oh, shut your mic off, Jim.